This offseason just keeps getting stranger and stranger. Tonight, the Cleveland Browns have traded for Odell Beckham, the Giants wide receiver. So this is the strangest NFL offseason. Maybe not really strange, but maybe the most chaotic that I've ever seen. Just in the last about 4 or 5 days, we've seen two of the top 5 wide receivers in the National Football League being traded. We saw Antonio Brown get traded to the Oakland Raiders, and now we've seen Odell Beckham get traded to the Cleveland Browns. Now, what's different about Odell Beckham being traded to the Browns than to Antonio Brown being traded to the Raiders? I think the Giants exchange is much more respectable than Pittsburgh's exchange. So, here's the full trade in details. The Cleveland Browns get Odell Beckham Jr. And in exchange, the Giants got the 17th overall pick in this year's draft. So that's a first-round draft pick. And just that alone, the trade is much better than what the Steelers got in exchange for Antonio Brown. And you can arguably say that Antonio Brown, well, maybe not even arguably, Antonio Brown is, at least at the very minimum, a top 3 wide receiver in the National Football League. Odell Beckham is, at a minimum, top 5 wide receiver in the National Football League. They get Cleveland's second, third-round pick, and they get Jabril Peppers. So automatically, the Giants get a much more respectable deal in exchange than what the Steelers got for Antonio Brown. So automatically, the Giants, they are not the losers of the offseason so far. The Steelers are. And I think unless the Steelers make big moves in this offseason, they're going to continue to be the losers of the offseason. I think this is a good trade for both sides. Because the Browns, they have Odell Beckham Jr. And this makes the Browns defense a lot more lethal because earlier in the offseason, the Cleveland Browns, they signed Kareem Hunt. So the Browns offense, the Browns team in general is young, but their offense is young as well, with Baker Mayfield having his second season coming up next year, and Kareem Hunt, only his third season in the National Football League. Odell Beckham, who's a young wide receiver. So a lot of young weapons. Nick Chubb going into his second season next year at the running back position. So the Browns are a team to watch out for in the next 5 seasons. I think now that they have someone like Odell Beckham, even though the 2 wide receivers that we've seen traded in the last few days they seem to have character issues, or people describe them as diva antics. You can't deny their passion for the game and what they provided for their teams. And they're going to provide for those teams they were traded to as well. So it's not all about the character in the National Football League. It's about winning games. And I think the Raiders and the Browns will win games this season. Because with the offseason moves the Browns have made and what the Raiders have made so far. So far, because the Raiders still have a lot of draft capital, and the Cleveland Browns, they can still make some moves in free agency. So it's something to keep an eye out on. As far as this trade is concerned, it's not one-sided like the Raiders and Steelers trade was. I think this is about 55-45. But I think the Browns, they got a little bit more out of it with Odell Beckham as far as quality. But the Giants, they're at about 45% of winning this trade. But it depends on what, of course, they decide to do with the 17th overall pick. So stay tuned for my mock draft for my Thursday night mock draft this Thursday night, as well as I might do a little bonus mock draft, but it won't be a mock draft. It's gonna be called a mock draft, but it's gonna be the free agency effect, maybe even the off-season effect. I think that's a much better term for it, because we've seen a lot of moves happen with trades, and we've seen moves with free agency already that I think are impacting the draft, and they impact all mock drafts altogether. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be interesting. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.